Welcome to the Tilted Halo. This is a new podcast, and it's for anybody who's a woman in ministry. You might be a pastor like myself, a bishop, a priest, a rabbi, music minister, elder, children's minister, whatever your title is. You're absolutely in the right place, especially if you're someone who loves your ministry and you're doing it well and you're feeling pressure to sometimes be perfect, and deep down inside, you know you're not. And how in the world to deal with that? And men, you're absolutely welcome here too, because this is about ministry and the same thing can happen to you. So you're all in the right place. Let's get started with the show. Welcome back to season 2 of the Tilted Halo. And I'm going to talk today about running on empty. Have you ever felt that way? I know that I have. I remember starting out in ministry, and I started out with a bang right out of the gate with 14 funerals over a period of 14 weeks. And that included over the time of Lent and Easter. And by the time I got to Holy Week that year, I was really, really drained. And I actually came down with the flu on Palm Sunday that year. So spent much of Holy Week in bed. But by the end of those 14 weeks in May, it was a time when I really felt drained. I was beginning to wonder if I would ever make it through ministry, period, for even a year, if I could survive that, because I felt like I was running on empty and didn't have a whole lot left to give. And part of it was needing to take some time off and some self-care, yes. But there's also this kind of myth, perhaps, that occurs within most of ministry, that we always have to be ready. We always have to be on top of the game, ready for everything and anything that might come our way. And there are days when those kinds of things happen. We all know one phone call. That's all it takes. A phone call, a knock on the door, and the whole day can be rearranged. Everything that was planned can just go out the window because there's an emergency. There's a need that we had not anticipated. And so we feel like we got to be ready, got to be able to go, got to be ready for every meeting, every Bible study, every Sunday morning, everything and anything that can happen along the way. And the truth is, we're not always ready. At least I know I wasn't. And there were times where I began to feel like I was running very much on empty. And so what happens when that in those times? Well, if we're going by that thought that we always have to be ready, then we kind of get down on ourselves on top of feeling like we have nothing left to give. And that doesn't help anything either. We might take some time off, which is a good thing, to do some good self-care. But even within Scripture, there's this idea that we always have to be ready. There's one of the parables that kind of talks about that is the parable of the 10 bridesmaids. And every time I've ever heard that parable or talked about it, it's always been about, there were the 5 wise bridesmaids who had extra oil and the 5 who weren't so wise, who didn't bring along extra oil. And so when the bridegroom was delayed in coming, the 5 who didn't bring along extra oil were running on empty, and the wise ones wouldn't share. So they told the others to go to the dealers and get some. Well, middle of the night, that's kind of hard to do. But recently I heard a new take on that parable that I had never heard before. And it really changed the whole concept of not only that parable, but what happens when we run on empty. And the new take was that back in the time of Jesus, when there was a wedding and waiting for the bridegroom would come with a torch and gather the people along the way. And the bridesmaids with their lights were kind of like extra ornaments that came along, and their lights, the little oil lamps that they had, wouldn't shed a whole lot of light. So those were just kind of like extra ornaments, like we might put on a holiday tree or something like that. And they were not the primary light. They weren't the ones who needed to get, shine the light to tell the way that they were going or to light the way for the bridegroom. No, the bridegroom was lighting the way. And they needed to rely on the torch that he was carrying, the light that he brought, not on their own little lights. And so the 5 that were considered not wise, they were not wise because they didn't trust the bridegroom. They trusted to their own little lights that they were going to go and get from the oil dealers to be able to light the way to get where they were going, instead of relying on the light shining from the bridegroom. And so when they finally showed up at the gate to get into the celebration, that's why the bridegroom said, I don't know who you are. You weren't following me. You weren't trusting my light. They were running on empty, and they didn't trust the light that was leading them. And that's such a powerful story that it's not just about being ready. It's about, who do we trust? What happens when we run on empty and feel like we're not enough? Which, quite frankly, I feel a lot of the times like, can I really do this? Am I enough? And what many of us women feel is, am I good enough? It's not a matter of us being enough. It's a matter of God, Spirit, universe being enough and us following where that leads. And, I think about what God has already done with nothing. Talk about creation. There was nothing there. And God said, I got this, can create anything out of nothing. And the people of Israel, when they left Egypt, they had nothing, nowhere, how do we go? How do we get there? God said, hey, I got this, I'm going to lead you. Moses, I can't talk straight. He was, how can I go to Pharaoh and how can I do this? And God said, hey, I got this. There's nothing here. You aren't enough. That's fine. I got this. So we need to trust in what God's got for us and where God leads us along the way. And when we run on empty, yes, please take good care of yourself. Please do the things that you know you need to do for good self-care along the way. But most of all, trust in God, Spirit, universe, to lead the way, to take the little crumbs that we have, the nothingness that we feel, the emptiness that is many times really there, and allow God to create something beautiful with who we are and out of God's grace and God's love. So we can run on empty, not because we are so good, not because we are so powerful, not because we're so strong or wise or smart or got everything together. No, that's not it at all. We can run on empty because of who God is and who we follow, the light that lights our way. So keep looking at that light. Keep running towards and following the one who is your guide, who is really the one who has the light and the creative power to create anything, even us, even when we're empty, to create something beautiful and wonderful. So until next time, Remember, when you run on empty, look to the one who is your light and follow that and trust that God can create anything beautiful and wonderful out of your emptiness too. So God's peace to you until next time. You have been listening to Tilted Halo with me, Kathleen Panning. What did you think about this episode? I'd really like to hear from you. Leave me some comments. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share this episode. And catch another upcoming episode for more conversation on ministry, life, mindset, and a whole lot more. Go to www.tiltedhalohelp.com, where I've got a resource guide and other resources waiting for you. And be sure to say hi to me, Kathleen Panning, on LinkedIn. See you on the next episode.